I think anger can be really good because you can direct anger and you can get things done with it. But when anger is pointing to like the wrong places, it's like so wasted, and then no problem actually gets accurately identified or accurately fixed.
Yeah. And I did see one of the things that you said, like there was one of Kyle's tweets or something. It said something like, they're getting $1 billion to stop trading. And I'm just reading that thinking, I fix MacBooks and I don't cover politics. This is just me just talking about shit that I see, and even I know that that's not true. And that, like, I could see how stuff like that being propagated would be incredibly aggravating. And I think a part of this is that people hear what it is that they want to hear, or they see the world in the way that they want to see the world. And I think this goes back to your original frustration when you were discussing Ted Cruz and AOC, which is that people are increasingly living in their own realities nowadays. And I think that people have reasons to see the world through a crystal, through a prism of how they believe it is. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, how's it going? How you doing?
I clicked on this from the video on Kyle Kalinske that you did recently.
Oh God. Yeah. Well, how's it going? How's life? How's business?
Doing what we can with the. Most of it is mail-in now, so most of the people that in the area disappeared. I chose a perfect time to move to a location 4 times the size. That's more expensive, right in Midtown, next to all the schools. A month before they all close.
Yeah, that sucks hard. Probably, yeah. I imagine. Yeah, I guess you just said your foot traffic is basically completely destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened? How did the Ted Cruz topic come up?
How did the Ted Cruz topic come up? I don't remember. I think somebody mentioned AOC's tweet. I think they wanted my opinion on something related to her tweet or something.
There was a good 3 minutes a few days ago where I thought, wow, that's unity. I mean, who would think that something as silly as this would wind up bringing so many politicians to say the same thing? But like it broke down almost immediately. I get what she's saying. Like, she seems to be saying, you egged on what led to the assault in the Capitol, and what you said, which is, if you truly believe everything, if you believe that all of the system is corrupt, then why not burn it down? I agree with that, but at the same time, like, their response is usually, well, what about last summer? What about all that stuff that happened? And usually I'll say, well, that stuff seemed to happen over things that were actually real. Like, there's a legit reason to be angry if a cop kills someone out of for a BS reason or in a BS way. Well, but at the same time, I think it's the same principle, which is it's increasing the temperature. And as you continue increasing the temperature, what do you expect people to do if they think that there's that level of injustice? Also, I'm obviously very biased here, 100% biased, because I'm obviously, my store is a block away from where all the stuff got destroyed. So I obviously have a clear bias here, because out of my own sense of self-preservation.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. I imagine we probably agree quite a bit on writing related stuff, but maybe not. I mean, I'm pretty anti-writing. I've gotten in a lot of trouble for takes related to writing, and being opposed to writing. Insofar as the unity thing goes, I guess I understand. So I'm pretty supportive of like Biden's call for unity, but I can also empathize with lawmakers who have watched people act in the most divisive ways possible for the entire duration of their political careers, and then feel a little bit, a little bit irritated at the call for unity now that they're on the back foot. So like people like Cruz were cheerleading like the Benghazi stuff, the emails stuff for Hillary Clinton for years, and have engaged in what is arguably, say for maybe the Civil War, like some of the most divisive rhetoric in U.S. history, like undermining the integrity of our elections, supporting people that think that everything has been stolen from them. So for a person like that, when their leader loses, when Trump loses, for them to be like, well, okay, guys, time to do the unity thing. I can understand why people are like, no, actually, fuck you. Like, you need to leave,
Yeah, I understand that. And I think this is not an intellectual argument in any way or discussing of policy, but my interpretation of Ted Cruz and clips like that is you're just pandering. He's pandering to get the support of a base, which to me is really weird, because you're pandering to get the support of a base that supported the idea that, maybe your dad, maybe you or your dad was responsible for some guy's assassination. I forget that whole crazy conspiracy.
Yeah, no, I don't think that. Yeah, I don't.
And like, but like they were, they implied that, and the same base that was voted for the guy that implied that and also thought your wife's ugly. It's like, Now you're willing to put your reputation on the line to change the results of the election in his favor. It's kind of like the Lindsey Graham thing, where Lindsey Graham said, I forget when he said it, if Trump wins, the party will be destroyed and will have deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he spends 2 or 3 years just
Chilling.
completely gargling his balls, and it's just like it's the lack of principles. Like, I don't mind if you have principles and you support something or you don't support something, but it's just it seems like pandering, and it's just kind of it seems transparent for what it is.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of what politicians do is pandering on both sides. I don't disagree with that. I don't even know if that's necessarily wrong, right? You probably should be trying to pander to the people that are voting for you or your constituents. I guess my problem is just that, like, it seems as of recently in my personal opinion, the biggest issue with politics today is that we are living completely and totally separate realities. So when I see politicians that pander to that, like, separation of reality, for me personally, it very much irks me. Because it's like, fuck, like you are contributing to the destruction of this country in like the worst way possible. And then when stuff like that leads to, like what are attempted coups or insurrections or whatever you want to call them, I can see other Congress people getting like upset that you're trying to like call for unity now. Like when, like a day earlier, you were literally engaged in acts that could have potentially led to like the destruction of this country,
I don't think unity in any way, shape, or form is going to come from something a Republican or a Democrat does. I think it's going to come from some sort of common enemy. I don't even mean in terms of war. I just mean, for instance, in this instance, you had people that were religious, atheists, left, right, gun control, gun owners, COVID deniers, lockdown everything people all come together to say, fuck Wall Street hedge funds. It's going to be something like that creates unity. Biden does not have the ability to create unity. Nobody in the, Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer can't create unity. It's going to be something like that brings people together. Yeah, the thing with Ted Cruz that bothers me is he has a degree from Harvard Law School. He's not stupid. There was one piece written by one of the professors that taught him that was, shame on you. You can decode these cases. So, like, for instance, I fix MacBooks. I don't understand the law very well. The average person reading about these cases can't really articulate fully why they're bullshit if they wanted to, but you can. You're a professional attorney. You're not stupid. So when you get up there and start, doing the whole fake election, or fraud election conspiracy, the courts are not listening to you crap, better. And that's why I find it to be pandering.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. Yeah. Well, other than that, how's life?
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
All right. I can't think of anything else. Fuck. Do you want to have a gentle conversation about the whole hedge fund stuff and everything going on with that? Or would you rather
go for it?
So this is something that I've followed a little bit over the past week. What's your general take on things?
My general take on things. I think on what specifically?
So I see a lot of outrage over stuff going on, and I guess the question I usually lead with is, do you think that there's been something done that was like immoral or unethical or wrong? Not necessarily illegal, but maybe something that should be illegal or something we should all look down upon or think is unethical or immoral.
Well, the hard part there is if you're going to advocate for a solution, you have to be able to point to a very specific problem, not something that seems like a problem. Like, this is the specific legal thing that happened. And it's too early at this point to say, like, this specific individual should go to jail for this specific thing. But I definitely think there needs to be an investigation into it. So, for instance, was naked short selling involved in what occurred to get us to this point? I think that that's something that should be investigated. I also think that Robinhood, to some extent, royally fucked themselves in the way that they handled communications, because there are people that said you should wait for all the data, but then there's people that say, well, you halted trading on the very particular stocks of a company that is bankrupting a business that the company you have a financial relationship with just bailed out. You need to give a better answer than the garbage crap answers that you gave. And I think that in general, there always winds up being a more detailed explanation than what you actually see in the beginning. But
okay. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with investigating stuff. I feel like I've seen.
Like I heard Elizabeth Warren talking about there needs to be something to protect the retail trader and all of this, and I just thought that was uh, weird, given that you don't know what law was disobeyed yet or wasn't disobeyed yet, so you don't have a solution yet. Like I think that this is in the stage where there needs to be people looking at it.
Mhm.
People need to know. Like people should be paying attention to what's going on and not letting it get dusted under the rug. But it's too early to. There's been no real investigation of anything, so you don't really know specifically what's gone on. I think the people that are pointing and saying like shut down the Wall Street Bets forum and that type of stuff, I don't think it's too early or late or anything to say that that is bullshit. If the conversation goes in the direction of shutting people down online who are discussing stuff like this, that I think should be taken off the table.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I guess the biggest issue that I've had recently is I see a lot of people like screaming and clamoring that illegal stuff was done, or people need to go to prison, or people are doing this horrible unethical stuff, and I don't really know what's happened that's like super wrong yet.
Oh yeah, I lost my shit on that too. I remember I screamed like people should go to prison for this. I was staring at my screen raging, and I think like really, if something like that happens where there's that much of a conflict of interest, and you come up with a complete PR answer that makes no sense, people wind up assuming the worst, and I wound up assuming the worst. And maybe I shouldn't assume the worst. Maybe it's wrong to assume the worst. But I think that there's a lot of context and reason as to why people assume the worst when they see this type of corruption, because we're just kind of used to it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I guess my desire is that people have a little bit more in terms of like measured takes, because I get one of the things that frustrates me the most, if I pull back and I take a broader look at things, one of the things that frustrates me is when there's so much anger. I think anger can be really good, because you can direct anger and you can get things done with it. But when anger is pointing to like the wrong places, it's like so wasted, and then no problem actually gets accurately identified or accurately fixed, and then you just have a bunch of people mad at a whole bunch of people that don't really deserve to be mad at, and then nothing actually changes, and it's just super unproductive for everything. That's like my general frustration, I guess, when people get like really riled up over something but don't have anything in particular they're getting riled up over. I guess you could argue kind of like the whole Occupy Wall Street thing, I think was that entirely. Like a lot of people were just really fucking mad in general at like the financial industry, but nobody really knew what they wanted changed, and nobody really knew what they wanted to get done, and nobody even really knew what happened that was wrong. And it's just like, it feels like nothing productive can come from that. So that's really frustrating for me.
Yeah, Peter Schiff did a 3-hour or 2-hour interview, and I actually wound up watching this 4 years ago, where he was interviewing the Occupy Wall Street people, and he was trying to figure out, okay, what specifically are you angry at, and what would you like changed? And over virtually 3 hours, it was very difficult for him to get any straight answers out of people. It was just kind of generalized anger and rage at everything.
Yeah.
And I did see one of the things that you said, like there was one of Kyle's tweets or something. It said something like, they're getting $1 billion to stop trading. And I'm just reading that thinking, I fix MacBooks and I don't cover politics. This is just me just talking about shit that I see, and even I know that that's not true. And
so they're trying to raise more money so that they can go back to allowing people to buy those stocks. So they're raising money for the exact opposite reason that Kulinski says they are.
Like I could see how stuff like that being propagated would be incredibly aggravating.
Yeah, and that's been my primary anger through all of this too, especially because there might need to be some things that need to change, but we're never going to find those out if we just get or if we just get mad at the wrong people. It's really frustrating.
I hate using this word because this is, I feel like this is a weasel word for when you don't have a specific thing that needs to be changed or that's bad. But there's just and like I really don't like using this word because I feel like it's a lazy cop out. But it seems like a systemic issue where as the story unfolded, you had members of the financial press that had this incentive structure that seemed to be built in to slander the people that were on that forum. And it's easy to slander them. There's a lot of them that say really like silly sounding shit, but to slander them in the worst possible way and go a little too far. Like one of the things that I heard you saying was that when let's say the Breonna Taylor case, that's a really fucked up case. That's a horrible thing. But when someone makes up something, now you have to explain to your family members why they should believe everything else, even though one stupid news outlet relied about one stupid detail.
Yeah.
And so in this case, you have it's not really hard to explain what that forum is, but I saw so many outlets go in on it and describe them in this horrible way. You had people in the mainstream media completely ignoring the fact that there was over 140% of the shares shorted, just pretending that these kids evilly manipulated the market in some way. And there was a lot of general distrust. And then I think that finally hit a peak when the company who is getting most of their revenue, not from their cuts, not from their users that are doing trades, but from the company that they're giving the trade information to, is bails out the company that's making them that is losing money on the trades, and then they simultaneously wind up halting trading with no good information whatsoever. They get on the news and say, we need money to be able to settle these trades, but we stopped trading and we don't have a liquidity problem. I think that was just peak people losing their minds.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, like, and this is kind of where I would hope that like the content creators or people that are kind of like leading the charge on all of this would like give the more measured takes. I don't fault any like line warrior on the internet, anybody on the ground. I don't like fault a random Twitter user for getting something incorrect here. Like, because I wouldn't expect the average person to like, I spend 10 hours a day in front of my computer streaming and talking about news and shit, right? So I don't expect the average person to be like of the same level of information, not because they're dumb or not capable, but just because they don't have the time to look into all this shit, which is fine. But when I see people like Kyle Kalinske that are just giving like completely and totally wrong takes, like, okay, well now like you're part of the problem when you should be part of the solution, because there might be problems here, there might be misincentives here, but when you're just blatantly lying about like why people are tapping lines of credit or why people are, you know, buying shares of other companies or what's going on, it's like, well, now nobody knows what anybody should be mad at anything for, and then it's just a whole bunch of misinformation that's flying around, and that's so unbelievably frustrating to me.
I did a video where I said, there should be an investigation into what occurred, not a pitchfork thing, a normal investigation. Here are the questions. Here's why we should look for it. And then immediately the next day, after seeing the CNBC thing and seeing the trading get shut down, I was saying people should be in prison for this. What the hell? Like in my video, I said, is this justified anger or am I losing my mind? I asked that question to the audience because I felt that I was absolutely losing my shit at how aggravated I was at what I was seeing. Like all the available information to me seemed to be just pointing to what was obvious garbage corruption.
Yeah.
And then like there was that person, I forget the name of him, the CEO of Webull, put an interview out there. You could tell that they were trying to rush anything that would stop people from losing their mind out as quickly as possible, because you had a financial services professional holding his cell phone up to his microphone at midnight just so that he could get the information out without having to wait a half hour to figure out how to hook up voice over IP for streaming.
Are you talking about the Webull CEO interview on that YouTube channel or whatever?
Yeah, I forget the name of the channel. Benzinga, that's the name of the channel.
Yeah, I think it was Mark Denier. I don't remember his name or something, but yeah. Yeah, for sure. I don't disagree. I don't envy Robinhood's position, obviously. I don't envy... I guess like looking at it from empathizing from Robinhood's perspective, they have to try to explain an incredibly complicated issue to people that are not financially savvy, and they have to do it without using like nuclear destructive words like we have a liquidity issue, which is something that no company would ever want to come out and say that, and in order to talk around that is incredibly difficult. Maybe they could have handled their PR better, but I really do think that a lot of the blame for how people view that initially falls on other people that were just misinformed and spreading insane conspiracies online about everything that was going on, which admittedly can look a little bit weird, but again, like if your job is talking about this full time, like if you do political, or news commentary 24/7, I feel like you should do the due diligence and figure out like, okay, well, why was trading stopped? Is Robinhood this evil company that's in bed with all these other companies trying to fuck over the little guy? Or are there actual SEC regulations in here that have like collateral requirements that are actually causing them to stop trading? And this is all like easily discoverable information on the internet too. Like none of this was hidden behind crazy paywalls or anything.
Where did the theory that they were paid $1 billion to stop trading come from?
So
that's one that I honestly haven't seen until I saw that tweet.
Yeah, so fuck, I have to go find the relationships here. So the two things that happened was Robinhood tapped a $500 million line of credit from their banks in order to sustain trading. And after that, they still didn't have the money necessary that they needed to send over to secure the trades that their customers wanted to engage in. And so I think two other companies came in and they invested, I think, $1 billion into the company in order to, I guess, shore the company's financials up so that they could continue trading on these securities. I think one of the other companies that did that was like a company called Citadel Securities. And people are saying that because Citadel Securities and Citadel Holding are owned by like the same people. That the real thing that happened was that $1 billion came in, and then they told them that they were only going to give them the $1 billion if they shut down trading or something, ignoring the fact that the whole reason why Robinhood was going after more money was to continue trading. Something like this is where this kind of like rumor started from or something.
What you said about them having a seriously complex issue and them not being able to go after, or them not being able to explain something very complex very quickly, I think that something similar should have been something that should have happened at the beginning of, let's say, 2020. So in the beginning, when they figured out with the whole mask thing. So the mask thing drives me nuts. I'm pro-mask. I think you should be, if you're going into a store or going out outside, just wear a fucking mask. It's not a lot to ask. The thing costs 50 cents, and it's not like, it's not like it's not going to destroy your life. But people were anti-mask because in the beginning they said, if you're wearing a mask, you're a hypochondriac, you don't need a mask. And then they just changed immediately. And one of the things I think should have been done is they should have said, listen, we fucked up incredibly. Here's how we fucked up. I am truly sorry that we fucked up. I will resign at the end of this. Here is the position. Here's where we are right now. Here is the situation we're in. Like, this is what what do you think? Or just... And that would have probably gotten a lot of people to wear it. Now, in this situation, instead of coming out there and coming up with the most ridiculous response humanly possible when there is that level of conflict of interest, just say, listen, here's the situation that we're in. This is probably going to seem ridiculous. I would understand if people don't believe us. Here is the actual situation. Like, just literally doing, okay, so what the Weeble guy did is he just had this basic phone call where in 5 to 10 minutes he was explaining everything. And there were a lot of comments on that where people were saying, okay, I agree. I don't understand this particular point. I disagree with this, or I think that's bullshit. But a lot of the people that listened to it thought this is reasonable. This is reasonable. We live, it's 2021. I mean, the idea that a multi-billionaire can't just, let's say, put his camera up and just post and say, listen, here's the situation that we're having. Here is where we are. And it just kind of blows my mind.
So, I want to agree with you in principle that if somebody makes a mistake, I think you have to own the mistake if you want to move forward and have people trust you. You can't just like hand wave it and pretend that it never happened. But I think the problem is that like a lot of these perceived mistakes have just been from incredibly irresponsible media reporting. I can think of a really good example of this because I dealt with so many coronavirus conspiracy theories. Holy shit. So in the beginning, I remember a lot of people got really upset because a lot of people said that the WHO lied initially about the coronavirus not being transmittable from person to person. This was one of the most common things brought up initially. Like, oh, look, the WHO lied because of Chinese influence, blah, 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 blah. When you go back and you find the actual press release and you look at what was written, all they'd said was that at that moment in time, there was no evidence of person-to-person transmission, but more research was needed. But as it goes from reporter to reporter, from Twitter headline to Twitter headline, eventually that gets reported as like, WHO says no human-to-human transmission. And then later on, when the WHO comes out and says, okay, we have evidence for human-to-human transmission, everybody's looking at the WHO like, hey, you fucking lied. What the fuck is wrong with you? And in reality, the WHO's position didn't change very much. It's just that the way that it was reported led people to believe they said something so different. And then going on your other point about the mask wearing, now, I could be wrong on this, but I don't think I am because I've had to go back to these points so many times. My understanding is that initially, the CDC made a couple statements. One was that it didn't recommend everyone in the general public wear masks, but it did recommend that people that were having direct contact with people that were sick, like caretakers and stuff, for them to wear masks. So the CDC never came out and said, like, masks don't work or masks don't do anything. It just wasn't recommended at the time. It didn't seem like a normal person would need to wear one, which I don't think is wholly inconsistent with their, like, could they said at the very beginning that, like, everybody needs to wear like some form of mask? Like maybe. I don't know if we had the evidence for that at that point in time, but I don't recall the CDC ever coming out and saying like masks are ineffective for the average person to wear or like masks don't do anything, because they were recommending them for caretakers or people that were directly exposed to people with the coronavirus. But I think that the way that it gets reported distorts people's views so much of what the original statements were that whenever they come out and make a new statement, now everybody's looking at them like, hold on, you said that masks did fucking nothing. Why are you changing your stance now? You're fucking up. Like, I don't believe anything you're saying, you know?
I don't remember the exact way that it was explained just because it was a year ago. I just remember, I really don't have any citation or data there. I just remember when it was going on at the time, there were people that I knew that thought that I was ridiculous when I was wearing a mask and they're saying you don't need it. And this is people in New York City, in a fairly liberal area where people follow, now are more than happy to follow all this stuff. And then when it came out, and that it wound up being based, I think, I forget everything exactly, but I think it was based around there being a shortage of
Yeah, and
the
they came out.
N95s.
Yeah.
And then, but N90, and they didn't want normal people buying up N95s that keep you from getting it. They wanted normal people just to buy the cheap 50-cent ones that don't keep you from getting it, but slow you from giving it to other people. And since there was lack of the N95s, they did not want people buying all those up, which is why they waited until later to bring up the whole mask thing. Because your average person is not going to make a distinction between N95 and the cheap, blue surgical mask, like 50-cent thing that most of these people use.
Yeah,
But like,
I don't disagree. Yeah.
but if the guy had simply come out on that day and just said, using any sort of social media tool, literally anything other than the copy pasta response that they gave, because keep in mind, the response that they gave initially wasn't even anything related to DTC or having money for trades. That the response that they gave just seemingly sounded like volatility of the markets and protecting our users. So that sounds like you are looking to just, pat your user on the head and say, you're probably too stupid to buy this. And it's at some extent, I think you are responsible for your own, for how badly you fuck up something when it comes to PR in this way. Like, it wouldn't have been that hard for him to simply do what the Weeble person did. It's not, and particularly since Robinhood itself is marketed to people that I shouldn't say marketed to. It's typically used by people for whatever reason that have genuinely no understanding of investment or trading. Expecting them to understand the intricacies of all that and not get aggravated when you halt trading, and then to post a response that kind of seems to, what's the word I'm looking for? Shit, I lost my words. Someone in the chat said you can't expect the CEO to be a good speaker like you. I'm not a good speaker at all. I forgot half of what I'm saying. But
sure, but even if that's true, also, like, a CEO should pay somebody else to be a spokesman. Then, like, there's a reason why you make money and pay other people to do things.
Yeah, not a PR intern. Like, I had a good idea in my head and I literally just forgot it.
Oh, well,
maybe it wasn't a good idea after all. Oh, so continue. Since I lost.
Yeah, I think I largely agree with what you're saying. I'm still not sure if he could have made any statement that would have gone over better. Because technically, there's like 3 different things you could say that were all true. Like, you could say that, like, we're protecting our users, which is kind of true, because if they don't follow like certain regulations, if they don't put up the required collateral, it is possible that people could start selling stock and not getting paid for it because the collateral just isn't there to pay them. So in a way, they are protecting users. They could have also come out and said, we're just following SEC regulations, which is also true. Collateral requirements are set by formulas from the SEC that has like strict regulations on like how much collateral do you need to put up for certain trades. They also could have said that like, and then they could have just come out and said, and then I think what they said later was like, we don't have the deposits right now to ensure that we can meet the collateral requirements for some of these trades, which is also true. Technically, all 3 of these things are true. Well, not technically, actually, all 3 of these things are true. I think they just tried to go with what was like the most kind of PR friendly. I'm not really sure if they could have said anything, though, that wouldn't have been spun to be incredibly negative. Like, if they would have come out and said, these are the SEC regulations, people not understanding what the regulations were still would have asked questions. Like, I still see a ton of people asking the question, for instance, like, well, if you had to stop the trades, why did you only stop the buys but allow the sells? That's market manipulation. Like, I hear a lot of people say that still, even though there are no regulations. Like, you can sell a stock anytime you want. There's not a collateral requirement for that. That's why that continued. And then if they would have said like, oh, well, we don't have the collateral requirements to meet like these trades, people would just say like, oh, well, you're lying about how much money you have, or why didn't you raise more money? You knew people were going to come in and buy this stuff. Like, I feel like people still could have spun a lot of other statements out into being something incredibly negative. It feels like at this point the narrative is so set in stone. I don't know if any kind of PR statement would have actually come out and stopped what people thought was going on. Because you mentioned that Weeble interview, which is a good interview, and the guy explains a lot of the more like basic market mechanics, but nobody's like carrying his narrative anywhere. I think that video, I'd have to go back and check, but when I watched that video, it had like 40,000 views. Like, nobody really cared about it. But whereas if I go and look at any video talking about the illegality of the hedge fund people, destroying retail traders, these videos all are in like the millions of views. Like, everybody's running with that narrative.
Let me see, because I did a video the night or at 1 or 2 in the morning after he did that video, and I read it, and that me listening to his video, which is just kind of just this exact same content, got 410,000 views. So that CEO interview has more views than the last 4 or 5 videos that I've done on it. And what I did is I just listened to it and then
Mm-hmm.
just asked my questions where I thought something was confusing. The
Okay.
one point that you mentioned where people are saying, why could you sell but only buy?
Mm-hmm.
I did a video where I re-explained that concept, and I put a timestamp to me explaining that concept. It has 300,000 views.
Mm-hmm.
And in that video, most of the comments say that's bullshit because they only allowed you to sell and not buy.
Yeah.
But in the video, I put a timestamp in the very beginning that says, let's start at this part. I'm going to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And, or at the very least, attempt to explain. So I played what the Webull CEO said, because I didn't expect people to listen to a 40-minute video of just that CEO.
Yeah.
And around that part, hopefully the timestamp is correct. It's correct within like a minute or two.
Mm-hmm.
And I said it, and I'm still reading comments, and I'm commenting on comments that say what is in this video is bullshit because they allowed people to sell and not buy.
Yeah.
And that kind of blows my mind, because
Mm-hmm.
my own video is explaining how that is the case or why that is the case.
Yeah.
I still think the main part where they screwed themselves is when they said, well, the issue is they don't have enough, let's say there's SEC collateral requirements, or they have to raise the amount of money they have. That makes sense. So that's something, okay, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
once the Robinhood CEO got on CNBC and said, we do not have a liquidity problem, he absolutely fucked himself, because the CNBC guy was even saying, like, listen, okay, it sounds like you have a money problem. This explains everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said no to that, that's the point at which the conspiracy theories are going to come out in full force. And at that point, you have a part in it, because the
Sure.
whole idea here is we're not able to make the trades because the collateral requirements went up. We would have to put up the money. Okay, so you have
Sure.
a money problem. Well, no, we don't have a money problem. Okay, cool. Then why are you limiting the trades?
And I think
then it's just,
I agree with you that he could have phrased that better, but like, I mean, as a business owner, you have to understand how fucking scary it would be to go on public TV and be like, we have a liquidity problem. Because like the next thing that people are like, are you insolvent? Like, what does that mean you have a liquidity problem? Like, I'm pulling all my shit out of Robinhood immediately. Like, if you're managing other people's like money or funds or securities, and your CEO is coming out saying like, you know, we're having a big liquidity problem right now. Like, I could see people running on that platform, like a run on the platform where people just start to withdraw everything. It's like, holy shit, like they don't have money. Like, we're out of here. Like, they're insolvent. We have to get the fuck out. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily right, but like, it's a little bit rough to be like, you have a liquidity problem when this is like an unprecedented amount of collateral needed. Like, the amount of collateral being asked for these securities, in combination with the immensely massive number of people coming onto trade, is like literally anybody could have a liquidity problem. And Robinhood weren't the only people that shut down as well, right? There were like 5 or 6 or 7 other platforms that stopped trades, and then there were like 4 or 5 more that limited the amount of trades on these securities. So
I heard that there were a lot of other platforms that did it, but for instance, I use Ameritrade, and they said that they were limiting trades, but when I actually tried one, just for the hell of it, it wasn't limiting me. So the reason that there was a lot more aggravation, I think, with Robinhood than other brokers that was supposedly doing the exact same thing, is they put up a notice that said they're doing the same thing, but it wasn't like that in reality. It was still letting you buy, like, just for the hell of it. I remember trying buying and then immediately selling BlackBerry just to see what would happen, and like there was not a limit the way that they said it would be limited, but then it wasn't actually limited.
yeah, my guess is they probably did it. They probably did it preemptively, right, in case a whole bunch of people tried to do it, so they could get away with it.
Yeah. They said they had an issue with the collateral. And again, I'm not saying that it's wrong for you to have a collateral issue as a broker. Maybe maybe that's not fully accurate. Maybe you should be able to absorb that kind of collateral as a broker. But that's not the main issue. The issue is when he gets on the news and says, when they just doesn't honestly say it. And when you said as a business owner, I think you understand how horrible that would be to tell that to your customers. Yeah. Telling the actual to your customers is sometimes genuinely horrifying and scary. But I've tried up front to just tell people. Sometimes I have to tell people things that just honestly suck. Like, someone's like, "Why can't you get my data off of this drive and this other person can?" And I'll just say, "I can't buy this donor. I can't find this thing anywhere." Or I'll just be honest and say, "I need a certain tool to do this job and I don't have it." "Why don't you have that tool? Are you not a real repair shop? Are you not a professional? Why don't you have that?" And I'll just be honest and I'll say, I get this repair in once a year. Because one person a year asked for it, I have not found it worth it to invest in this particular part. It's not because I don't like you as a customer. It's not because I don't want to work on this. It's just because I don't have it. I don't have what I need to be able to do my job. Like, here's why. Here's someone who does. And like, it takes, I don't want to say balls or courage, because it kind of sounds like I am. It kind of sounds like I'm promoting myself to be a better human being than I am. But it's just it takes a belief that telling the truth is actually the right thing to do. And the first time you do it, it's absolutely horrifying. But It's a much better way to run a business. And the thing is, I understand why he's thinking to himself, I don't want to say that I don't have liquidity on television,
Mm-hmm.
but what's the fear of that? So you say that nobody wants to use your brokerage anymore and you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Is he any less screwed now as a result of this? Because I was reading this on Y Combinator. So he said that to avoid people thinking he has a liquidity problem, but now a bunch of people think that he's in bed with hedge funds. Is that better? Is that going to bring more people to his platform? I mean, this is going to be the
Well, I think
this is going to
that
be something that's
yeah, so I think the scary thing is that like, could it like, and it's hard for us to say. The most frustrating thing about history is we can't like run it again and see what would have happened otherwise. Because it's easy now to criticize him based on the blowback he's getting now. But like, I know, for instance, Robinhood is trying to IPO soon. They really want to come out and they really want to be publicly traded. And I also know that Robinhood doesn't want to lose its base. So right now we can look and say like, well, on Wall Street Bets, a whole bunch of people are saying that they're in bed with hedge funds. I don't know how far that news is carrying. It doesn't seem like everybody's pulled out of their platform. Like they're running into like, technically, you might want to say these are good problems, right? They have too many people using it. They can't put up the collateral for all the new inflow of customers. It's conceivable that in another world where they come out and they say like, we just don't have the money to back this up. Like we ran out of money, guys. Especially in the trading world. I don't know how involved you've ever been with Bitcoin, but there have been, as a fellow or former Mt. Gox user, there have been a lot of these like online exchanges for cryptocurrency that have gone under, and people have just gotten completely fucked out of all of their money. You lost.
I only
everything.
know about I only know about Mt. Gox screwing people and about Binance recently screwing people.
Yeah.
So Binance locked them. Like I know people that can't withdraw their Bitcoin from Binance.
Yeah.
And that are incredibly aggravated at it.
So yeah, so like so for these types of things, like there's even some history for people of being like, okay, fuck, they don't have money, I gotta pull out. So like it might be that they take the hit now for some people to say they're in bed with the hedge funds, but that's better than them saying, you know, like, oh well, we have liquidity problems and everybody just leaving and then their IPO failing and then like everything else is being fucked. It's hard to say one way or another. Obviously they're gambling on that. A second question I want to ask you about the business and honesty thing. So I tend to align with you in terms of like I'm brutally honest with everything that I do. I wonder if that equation changes though as you grow out to have more employees. So for me, I can say whatever I want, and I've taken huge financial hits for some of the positions that I've staked out on, but I'm okay with that because it's just me and my job. And if I lose money for things I say, that's okay. I have the integrity to do that. I wonder, though, if it gets harder, if you start to run companies where you're managing, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 employees, if you come out and you're brutally honest about something, like let's say, so I know, I think you said you have like, did you say like 7 or 10 employees that you have working for you?
Yeah, about that. It's up to 15 at the moment.
15, oh, that's awesome, nice. Let's say that it came to a point to where, so I'm going to give you a hypothetical. These are really hard questions to answer too. I don't expect you to have a perfect answer. Or if you're not comfortable answering, that's fine as well. Let's say that like 3 people emailed you and they wanted you to repair like very like, I don't know if you say like esoteric models of Apple products. And it's the type of product where you could do the repair, but you don't have access to either the schematic or the tool. And to go out of your way to get that, it wouldn't be worth it for just doing like 1 or 2 of these like a year. It's just not worth the time to do it. Let's say that you could either shoot back like a PR response to these 3 people where it's like, hey, like, we don't have the ability to do, certain types of repairs because they blah, 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 blah. Or you could send back very frank emails and be like, listen, in order for me to get the tool for this, it would be the same time as if I were to do 20 other repairs. Like I can't do this, right? Let's say that you send off the really honest one, and the result of that is people start to post and post rumors on the internet that say like, oh, like this Louis Rossman guy, he pretends that he's like a fucking Apple genius, but in reality, he can only do basic repairs. He's basically an Apple bar genius. Like this guy doesn't know anything. Like he's fucking over this. Let's say this bad PR starts to like measurably affect like the amount of orders that you get. Like people are like, well, I was going to do Louis Rossman, but I saw those like 3 YouTube videos with these guys and he can't do like, he can't repair an iPhone from 2009. What the fuck? This should be really easy, right? And you actually start to lose business from that. Do you think that the integrity there or being 100% honest or truthful is worth the potential trade-off that your business could suffer or employees under your business could suffer as a result of that? That's a really big one, sorry.
That's a good question. I don't think it's that bad. I thought 100% would go in the honest direction. It's just you need to make sure that you have someone that's actually capable of phrasing things properly.
Yeah.
So at my old job, there was one person who these 2 people could tell you the exact same news. And one of them, you would get a chargeback and a 1-star review. And the other person, he would pay you double what you were supposed to pay for the room that night. Like this was a rehearsal studio. They could tell you the exact same thing, but the manner in which they're getting it across is what pisses people off. And so one of my own canned responses says this. So this is a basic one. People say, can you upgrade the RAM in this machine all the time? Why not? I saw you could solder. And I'll explain it very simply. There's 32 chips on this board. So I have to find 32 chips. I have to reball them because you can't buy them new. So I have to reball 32 chips, put them on here. And then once it's done, if it doesn't work, if it beeps, I have to play eeny, meeny, miny, mo to figure out which one it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to individually remove and put back on each of the 32 to figure out which one is not working if I do the repair and it doesn't work. And here's what pay rates are in the city. Here is, why this is not something that's economically viable. This is
Mm-hmm.
actually a canned response email that I have. And granted, perhaps comparing this to the situation that a large billion-dollar brokerage is going through may be seen as ridiculous, but I think it's the same principle, and I think it scales. People appreciate that honesty. If you explain it properly, if you don't come off to say, because there's different ways to explain things. You can say you're not worth my money, or
Mm-hmm.
you can say, well, I'd love to do that, but here are the challenges I face in doing that. So this is why I'm unfortunately not able to do that. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
99.99999% of the time, you will get a good response. I've gotten maybe 2 or 3 negative reviews in 5 or 6 years because I've given someone that type of honest response
Mm-hmm.
and they took it the wrong way. But the overwhelming number of people will take it the right way. And there's one person at work, Steve, who is far better when it comes to social situations than I am, who's always helped me tweak what I'm saying so that it doesn't come off in this Asperger's-ish way where it just sounds like I don't want to deal with you. And as long as you do that, things usually do go well. And again, to be clear, this is a 15-person company, not a large brokerage firm.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that method is something that can scale. And I'm hoping that if there's any sort of positive change that comes from this, I'm hoping that the Weeble method of communication is the one that wins the day rather than the Robin Hood method of communication. It's just.
Gotcha. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I'm sure it happens to you. There are times where I see certain PR statements that companies make, and I'm like, oh my god, like if you would have paid me $20, I could have phrased this so much better. Like, what are you doing? So I definitely understand that for sure. That you can say the same thing in different ways and get way different responses for it. Yeah. Yeah.
But I also hear what you're saying, which is I think a part of your frustration is that the initial narrative is the one that sticks,
Yeah.
and any new information that comes out is completely and utterly ignored in favor of the initial information.
It's like doing a retraction. It never sells as hard as the initial claim. Yeah.
So for instance, I remember doing this one video on the Henrik Husby case with iPhone screens in 2018, and it got about 4 or 5 million views. And then I actually got called to be a witness in his court case, and this was in June of 2019. I did not have access to the court documents or the opposing party's evidence until like 24 hours before the case. I read over the evidence, and it's like, okay, man, listen, I don't like Apple as a company. I think they do a lot of shit wrong, but Apple has a fucking point here. I mean, again, I'm not saying that it's right that they don't make parts available, but wow. And I knew the person that sold him those screens, and I went and screamed at them. But like, I actually submitted that information to a news outlet. I think it was Vice. Yeah, it was Vice. And they never published it. They never published any of it, and they never mentioned it again. And that blew my, like, that kind of red pilled me on journalism, or at least on large journalistic outlets. It's like, you've been covering this story for a year and a half and asking me for info all the way. I give you one piece of information that cuts against the story that you were giving, and you're not even willing to post the new information. Because the thing is, as the story is coming out, you're not always going to have all the information, and you're probably going to get shit wrong. But are you going to update things as you find new information and try to get it out there? And when I actually did the video on the update to that case that had all of the information that showcased why Apple had a point, that video got 147,000 views. The original one from a year earlier, before I had access to any of the court documentation, because it was all private at the time, had 4 million.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of your frustration and aggravation.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm noticing it in this video, because in this video where I go through and very clearly explain the whole buying and selling thing to people, comments in it are, my own comments are saying, Lewis, it's not even that they disagree with me. People are saying, they're saying, Lewis, you didn't explain why they were allowing selling but not buying.
Yeah, I see the same all the time, where people will leave comments. I see it in my own videos. Well, somebody will leave a comment where it's like, well, you didn't even consider this. And it's like, well, actually, I did it. 3 minutes in the video, I talk about this almost word for word. Like, yeah.
You did, and I think a part of this is that people hear what it is that they want to hear, or they see the world in the way that they want to see the world. And I think this goes back to your original frustration when you were discussing Ted Cruz and AOC, which is that people are increasingly living in their own realities nowadays. And I think that people have reasons to see the world through a through a prism of how they believe it is. And anytime the world is outside of the way that they believe it is, that it causes them a sense of stress or anxiety. So they look for information or affirmation that the world actually is the way they see it, whether they think it is more in a left-wing section or a right-wing way, or they see it in a more populist way or a more neoliberalish way. People are, I think, are looking for affirmation that the world is the way it is. And I think this is a lot of people think that when it comes to, at the very least, finance or high levels of government, they feel screwed over. They see a lot of corruption, and then something like this happens. And I could explain the way the trading system works and say, listen, here's where I think there's blame. Here's the person who lied. Here's the person that I think you should be angry at. And here's why you should be angry at it. But they actually want to be angry at him for a different reason. Like, you should be angry at the Robinhood guy for getting on CNBC, for saying what he said, for lying about liquidity. This is bad. This is why the buying and selling thing was going the way it was. And this is what you should be mad. But they want to be mad at something else, because being mad at something else reinforces their world's view about the way the world is and the way the world works. And I think people want a safe space for the way that the world works.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I've been talking to a lot of people over this. I call other people out all the time for giving like dog shit reactionary takes to things. And I still do it as well. So obviously I'm not perfect. Like, there are times where I don't get everything right in the beginning of something that's come out 100%. I'm really happy that you've like done more digging and everything. Cause I was also falling into it in the beginning where it's like, oh fuck, like this looks like it's really fucked up and horrible. And you do a little bit more reading, but I wish other people would do that. People are so scared of like admitting they're wrong on anything that like they'll never change. If they give like an initial take, they'll defend it with their fucking life, or they'll just ignore it and pretend it never happened. So yeah.
I'm most certainly guilty of becoming aggravated or angry when I see something, when I first see it, and reacting based on it. And I try to put it into the content and say, like, I'll have it be a back and forth with the audience. Do you think I'm losing my mind? I feel like I'm losing my mind, or is this justified? But when I see that I've gotten something genuinely incorrect, I feel I feel a knot in my stomach. Like, I remember when I first saw that Henrik Husby case, when I saw the court documents, I felt a knot growing in my stomach. I couldn't do any work until I did my update video on it. And it blew. And then I wound up doing 2 or 3 updates because I was so aggravated that the first one was still being looked at more. But yeah, I am most certainly guilty of being aggravated at. But in this case, I don't know, maybe I'm just being biased because I was the one who did the video. I still think that Robinhood CEO is in many ways responsible and accountable for the way that people are viewing the situation based on how, like, based on the lie that he told. Like, just back to the Breonna Taylor thing that you said. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for coming on our chat. Have a good one, man. Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.
Great. Shoot at him. You stupid fuck! I hate you! And you're... Oh my god, I hate you so much.
That's why we had to run.